Hey, what's going on? This is Billy Newman, and thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. I'm here today with Marina Hansen. How you doing, Marina?
Hey, Billy, I'm doing well.
Thanks so much for doing some recording with me, hanging out in the studio for a few. I think it's kind of cool. Thanks for doing it with some sound, too.
Hey, I think it's pretty cool.
So cool doing it with some sound. I think it's cool, like building on little studio stuff. But yeah, photo stuff's been going good. It's April now. April's moving by really fast.
It is, yeah. It's the 20th already.
It's finally starting to feel more like springtime outside. Like we were out on a walk just a little bit ago and we see all those little white daisies out in the fields.
Yeah, it's cool seeing the daisies all over the place now.
Or not even in the fields, just in the little lawn.
Just in people's yards.
Yeah.
In the university's property.
Yeah, it's cool. All the little clover or what, I don't know, like whatever little flowers that are blooming up. But there's a bunch of them right now, which is really nice. And it's been raining so much. It's probably a ton of growth right now. I don't know, but it was really cool.
It seems like everything's really started blooming over the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
Things are starting to get a lot more colorful again.
Yeah, way more colorful than it had been. And yeah, it's just been so gray. We see the little leaves popping out like on the tree over here in the front.
Yeah.
And on the one out front over there, like we see like the little leaves coming out, and it grows so fast too. Like they just sprout really quickly.
They do.
And they develop their leaf like so fast. It might just be like a couple more or weeks, and we'll see leaves. Like
yeah,
it's just
full
like
leaves.
yeah, like the middle of the season. But it's gonna be cool. I'm glad that we're kind of moving back into that part of the year. Finally, it seems like.
Oh man, me too. Yeah, I'm really glad to be finally starting to feel like it's springtime.
Oh man, this winter, 2017.
It was too long.
It's too wet over here.
It was really wet.
West Coast, Oregon, man. Yeah, it seemed like
Gray
a wet,
and muddy.
gray, muddy winter a lot of the time. Yeah, that was a good time.
So good.
Thanks goodness. Thank goodness for winter. Thank goodness for springtime though. It's cool that it's getting nice out. It's cool. I kind of switched things up in my camera bag, and I've been taking your Nikon N80 that's been around forever. I guess my cousin bought it back in like 2003 or something. You know?
Oh wow.
But yeah, that Nikon N80 with the battery grip is what I shot a bunch of my favorite pictures that are up on like that board right now. Like some of the cool stuff that I shot in 2014.
Yeah.
I really liked that stuff. And then we've had the F4 here that I've been leaving around for a bit, but it's been kind of cool. I liked hanging out, shooting with that other little camera for a little while.
Yeah, it's cool that you're using it again. I remember you taking a ton of photos with it a few years ago.
I really like that camera. I wish there was a few things that were better about it, or like there's just a few ways that the knobs roll, or the weight of it is, or the way the autofocus grabs, or something. A few things like that I wish were like keyed in just a little bit tighter. But it's cool because it's such an inexpensive camera. It's really replaceable in a sense in that way, or like it doesn't seem like it needs to be really precious. But it's cool because I love the pictures that I get with it. Or just the way that I'm able to capture light and stuff seems to be a little tighter and a little bit more consistent. Maybe just because it's newer, but it's a little better than what I'm able to get with the F4.
I noticed. Oh, sorry.
I noticed the way that the box like lines up to the film is a little bit different, and you just see like a little bit of fade sometimes. Like at the top of the exposures that I get from the F4, there's a little bit at the top line. There's like
I've noticed that.
Yeah, like a little different discoloration thing. It's weird. It just like it works a little different because it's 30 years old now. But I like how sharp and how crisp some of the color matrix metering is that I get when I'm working with film, because that's the thing that I didn't have for a long time when I was working with the manual focus film Nikon camera that I've got over here. Was that you didn't have any color matrix metering, you didn't have any autofocus, and it's really interesting kind of like bringing that up and working with digital lenses, or like lenses that were like Nikon G lenses, those with the silent autofocus motor. It's a faster autofocus, or it's just a little bit more consistent, faster autofocus, which is something you couldn't get with film in the past. And they're just a little bit sharper, more contrast heavy lenses than some of the manual focus things you could get in the past. And some of our understandings about like art and light is so much better than what maybe some of the film stuff in the past would have been. So it's interesting what we can get now by making exposures on like newer film camera bodies, but just with film and with newer glass than what would have been available for film shooters back in the 90s. It's kind of cool. I was thinking about that, like the difference that makes of shooting with autofocus.
Man, probably makes all the difference. It seems, it's really cool the kinds of, or just how all of it is available now.
Yeah.
Like you can use a pretty cool old camera with nicer, newer lenses and get
Yeah.
even better quality photos.
I like that idea of it. Well, like on the cheap side. I mean, I'm sure there's kind of the different high end side. It's weird because like on the other side of it, you go the different way where people are trying to get their $5,000 Leica lenses that are from
Mhm.
the 70s to go on their new camera bodies.
Sure.
That seems like
Yeah.
it's a whole. I don't know. That's for retired people. For me, like, when I'm trying to spend my $250 in the best way to get the most photos, getting like an $80 film body and $100 Nikon 50 mm 1.8 and a couple rolls of film,
It's a
and
pretty cool
like,
setup.
well, yeah, and that's really what a lot of my best images were made with. Was just kind of that simple setup. A lot of and just the way that we've had color rendition with a lot of these has been cool. Or
Yeah, it's been really interesting noticing that part of it with the different film cameras because I feel like the N80 really does the best job with
yeah,
just
I like it
really
too.
like it's a pretty guaranteed shoot when you go use it.
It's really flexible. That's a benefit of film too, is film itself is more flexible in its exposure range than what digital is. Digital has to
Mhm.
be really tight on what your exposure settings are. Like if it's more bright or less bright than the exposure, you get into trouble pretty fast. You get into
Mhm.
overexposure and underexposure. But it's interesting with film because like your meter can be kind of anywhere within a range of a few stops, and the film itself will kind of adjust for you. It'll adapt for
Right.
you, and so it won't blow out as quickly when you're shooting with film. It's a weird little thing that yeah, or it's just not as affected by changes in light as some of the digital sensors that we have calibrated right now are.
Yeah, that makes sense. That must be like that I think that's the quality that you see
Oh yeah,
in
that
film
yeah.
photos too. Like that's the part of it that you notice of
I think the way that it's capturing this total scale of light from like lights of like pure
it.
white to black, I think that part is different. And that way that it shows saturation and stuff in the shadows, that's what we see different too, where it's able to kind of pull brights down a little bit and darks and shadows up a little bit and still have it be in the dynamic range that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a big part that we're able to see, and like that and the way that it looks, and some of like the way that it renders color and stuff. So I don't know. I always like that part of it. You know what I like the most too is like with the N80 or with a lot of these other film cameras, you kind of learn a bit that it's like the film that matters. It's but the
Oh
box of
yeah.
the camera, with the lens and stuff too, of course. But like the box of the camera isn't really as important, or the focus of it is kind of removed. And that's something I'd not been used to after shooting with digital for a long time, because you kind of become attached to this mindset that the sensor is the camera, that the photograph does come from the camera, so the best camera has the one with the best sensor is the one you get the best photos from. But it's interesting on the film side a little bit as you break it down. It kind of seems where like what we were just talking about a little bit. The N80 works great for it, but it's kind of it just allows the film to be exposed, or allows the
Right.
film to be captured the right way, and it kind of gets out of the way of every other thing that would it could get in the way of. Which in some ways the F4 gets in the way, in some ways, or there's
Yeah.
there's things that happen with it, and I like how just kind of easy it is to use a little old film camera. It's been fun.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you're back to using it again or doing a little more with it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool just walking around with it. I take a bunch of pictures of silly stuff all day long. So it's fun to walk around and try and take little pictures of daisies in a field. I don't know. It's not too bad. But today I had two photos to talk about. They're both up on Instagram right now. It's at Billy Newman. The first one was a tulip photo because right now it's in late April, and there's that wooden shoe tulip farm that we've been to for the last couple years. That's up in Woodburn, Oregon. I really like that spot. It's cool. I was thinking about going there again this year, but I know that we have photos from there already.
It'd be neat though to make a
Yeah,
another trip back.
I'd be really happy to. And I remember last year we went up and we had some nice weather, and the year before that we had some good opportunities too. But I think we went up there and I took a good part of a roll of film, just up there in the flowers, and I posted this one of a tulip that was kind of right at that good stage, and I used it. I remember thinking about when we were trying to set the photograph up. I remember using, I think, like a really wide aperture. I think I used the 50 mm with the 1.8, and I focused on the tulip that was a little bit away. But what I tried to do purposely was put other tulips in the foreground in front of me. But putting it at 1.8 and having those so close to me, it would really blow out those tulips completely, and so it would kind of turn those just into colors, which is what I was
Yeah.
hoping for. And that's a little bit of what you see in the picture. I guess it's not up right here where we're looking at, but when you look at the photo, you see kind of like a red hue or a red kind of soft uh like glow, not glow, but just like effect of a petal of a flower that was there that's kind of in the
Yeah.
frame, but it's kind of blown out and out of focus, which I thought was kind of nice. But I like that kind of adding the texture from the foreground to the center where you see the little tulip. There's so many cool tulips over there up there. I like the tulip farm a lot.
Yeah, me too. They have a really great mix of colors. It's cool for having a few different kinds of things to be able to set up.
Yeah, it is really nice. I like because you can, well, they have the props and stuff that are sort of set up like the tractors, and they have a little, the land is kind of set up with a little bit of a roll to it and some trees and a little farm and the Dutch windmills. They have
Right.
that sort of theme going on, but it's really neat too because if you're there at a time when it's clear, which it happens a decent bit in the springtime, if you have enough opportunities, if you're there when it's clear, you can see Mount Hood from a few of the angles. And if you're there, if you time it at the right time of day, I'd say probably evening, like after the sun's behind you and you get some sort of easy sunlight on Mount Hood and you have the right lens, I think that's a really cool photo with the tulips as it kind of like bands up to where Mount Hood is out in the distance. It's kind of a cool area in that region south of Portland as you look up to the Cascades. It's nice.
Yeah, it's a really pretty area over there. It's a lot of like nice land.
Yeah, it's so cool over there. I haven't really checked out a lot of that stuff. This is probably, or that spot and this time of year is one of the best times to be there
Hmm.
around the tulips. And, the rest of it's just, I think, like potato farming or something. Or, it's like a lot of agricultural stuff in that area.
Sure.
In that part of the Oregon. But it's really beautiful there. I love the tulip farm. I went up there and we did like the little van shoot a few years ago. That was 2015. That's 2 years back
Oh
already.
wow.
I was thinking about those pictures. I have it set as my desktop background right now. Where I look at those little tulips in that van. But it was so pretty that night. That was really dreamy. And I loved like the colors of it, or just kind of the color at the end of the day. It's a really really nice time to be up there, like right as the sun starts to go down, or as the
Yeah.
sun's even really set. I think that's kind of the nicest time when everything's really even lit, sort of shaded color. It's a really nice time to take pictures of flowers if the light's right. But you have a section there in the evening that's pretty nice. That's cool. So the second photo that I posted was an image that I put up before. It's a photograph of Mount Hood that we shot at like 400 millimeters with that zoom lens. But we took the photo of Mount Hood through the windmill farm on the east side of Mount Hood out in eastern Oregon, where it kind of lifts up into the high desert when you're east of the Cascades. That's where we get kind of south around Bend, and then south where we were camping a few weeks ago. We get the high desert look with the sagebrush, but out in northern and northeastern Oregon, we get this like high prairie land, like where it's grassland that kind of rolls through there. You remember
Yeah.
driving through there. And it's cool when you get out there. Just before you get to Pendleton, there's a few roads that kind of cut off. I think we just took a pole off, but that's when you start seeing a handful of these big rows of windmill farms that are lined up along the grassland out there. And it's really pretty to see. But at the end of the day, like we were there, or we were driving out the I-84 on our way out to Hell's Canyon, and we pulled off and we drove down a road for a while. We used for this photo, I used like the telephoto lens to zoom in really tight up on the Mount Hood, and I tried to center it up in the frame so that you see like the peak of it. It's a really cool spot, just the angle of the landscape that we were at. It was cool to see everything kind of lined up in that way. You know what I mean? Like where Mount Hood's kind of just lined up center, but it looks even, and it's really
Right.
cool. Mount Hood is an amazingly uh, symmetrical mountain. A lot of them are not really that clean.
Yeah, it's pretty pointed up into a triangle.
Yeah, it really is. I think, oh, I can't remember. I think they used to say that Mount St. Helens was like the one that was like the Fuji of the Northwest,
Oh yeah.
because I think Mount Fuji is sort of regarded as super super smooth.
Hmm.
But Mount Hood, I mean, at least from this angle, from the east side, like you don't see the horn at the top of the mountain,
Right.
and it's really cool. I like that the way that it looks, but it was kind of even and lined up with the tops of these windmills that are spinning around out there. And it's kind of cool to see the contrast to some of the man-made engineering on top of the grasslands that are out there, out in Eastern Oregon. When you get out on I-84, looking at those windmills, but it was cool. I love that view looking back into the sunset.
Yeah.
Seeing Mount Hood is cool.
It was really cool. That was a great evening that we pulled off on that
Yeah,
road. I'm really glad we did.
I'm really glad that we did too. You know, it's cool. In the photo, you see like a ton of orange in the sky, a ton of orange and kind of pink stuff, and you get that a lot in the evening. But it was interesting because I remember driving by it when we were there. The reason that it was there is because there was a grass fire
Right.
on the north side of the Columbia River, up in the Washington side, on like some rim rock, and it was burning over there like a bunch of acres. It looked like it started to take off a bit, and you could see like a bunch of that smoke come up and drift over the Columbia River and then over Oregon, which was kind of making up a good bit of the pink in the sky was, or the pink and orange look was fire, smoke in the sky.
It looked so cool though. It was the perfect moment. It caught
Oh
all
yeah,
those colors so well.
it was very pretty. Yeah, it was very nice. It was cool. But I really like going on that trip. It was fun going up there and getting this photo. I thought it was kind of interesting when I took it. It was cool. I remember as part of it. I remember I took like a few photos, and I try and take like just a couple photos at a time sometimes. But if you have the camera that can do it, and you have like the tools, it's good to like know when to deploy them. So like in this situation, it was tricky because all those windmills are spinning at that time, and there's a handful of those windmill blades that are going to intersect in kind of a weird way with the peak of the mountain, which I didn't really want for the photograph. And so what I tried to do is I switched it to like the higher frames per second, you know, like this
Oh.
sport shooting mode, and
Mhm.
I just hammered out a bunch of them, and I'd watch as the rotation of the windmill would spin around, so that I had an option where there's going to be one in that section. And I remember going through in my editing and like that. Okay, none of those work, but this one does. That's when like all of the windmill blades get to the right spot and are kind
Mhm.
of outlining the shape of the mountain instead of intersecting or cutting in to the shape of it. But it was just one of those little photography things that I was trying to figure out before I got back to the editing room and went, oh, shoot, I got it, but it's just a little thing that's a little off. But it was cool. I like
Yeah.
shooting that one a bunch.
It's a really cool picture. I like that one. And it's a really neat landscape out there. Like you're saying, it's a lot of rolling hills, grassland, high desert sort of stuff. And there's really nothing else. So it looks really neat with the windmills too. Or it makes the landscape even
I
more
like it, yeah.
interesting looking over there.
I remember back in 2012, I have another photograph that was made in a relative landscape where there's Mount Hood and there's windmills and there's a sunset. And I have that other photograph, I think, in our first book, like our first
Mhm.
little travel book. And I like that picture a lot. I had different lenses and different understanding of how to use glass at the time, so it looks quite a bit different than this one does. But it was cool too. I liked it that night. Also, it was just like a really cool, kind of dreamy spot to be. It's pretty. I like the way that the windmills look on the land. I'm glad I don't have to
Yeah.
live right next to it, maybe,
Oh yeah.
but I think it's great. I think it was cool. It was fun seeing it. But thanks for doing this podcast, Marina.
Thanks so much for having me on your show, Billy.
Thanks for talking about two of the pictures that I'm putting up on Instagram. That's at Billy Newman. If you want to check out my Instagram feed, you can check out my Mastodon feed. It's this new little kind of open source side project thing. I think I'm Billy Newman on Mastodon also. To whoever would want to check that out, I'm gonna post this link on Mastodon, so at least I have to mention it, right? But yeah, and then BillyNewmanPhoto.com is where there's going to be other stuff on my website. You can look at other podcasts that we're putting together. You can listen to this one too. Listen to past episodes, whatever you want. That's at BillyNewmanPhoto.com. But Marina, thanks so much for doing this podcast.
Thanks a bunch, Billy.
I appreciate it. So, on behalf of Marina Hansen, my name is Billy Newman, and thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast.